Hey everyone, I'm Tammy Salenberger, the author of The One Inside 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. This podcast is for anyone curious about who they are, the different parts of themselves, and for those who want to connect with their true self. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, on today's episode, I chat with Anna Vincent. Anna is a level 3 IFS therapist who resides in Denmark. We talk about attachment, the nervous system, inner and outer co-regulation that happens with parents and children, partners, clients, and therapists. We talk about the new Danish parenting. Children always make sense, relationships matter most, and conscious parenting. Anna says two things that I absolutely loved. One, parts don't want to settle for unconditional love and attachment from self. But when they actually get that connection from self, they realize it's not settling at all. She also says we don't need to lean into our partners from our young parts. Our parts need to lean into ourself, and then ourself can lead out into our partner. I thought that was beautiful. You can find out more about Anna, her podcast, and the articles she writes on her website, annavincentz.dk/English. And that is on the show notes. Enjoy.
Anna, I'm so excited to talk to you today. And I thought we would just start with where we always start, which is where are you in the world and what do you see if you look out your nearest window?
So I'm in Denmark, in the north of Zealand. It's like north of Copenhagen, up the coast, and a little bit into the country. And if I look out my window, it's completely dark because it's late here. But normally, I can see I live like in like an old farmhouse that's been restored. So there's like 3 apartments in it. So outside is my garden, and then behind us there's this trees, which is really pretty now because it's fall. So it's like yellow and green, and yeah. So there's a lot of trees. There's woods outside, and you can walk. There's like a walking path down to the lake. We have a really big lake here, which we share with the Queen, who lives close by too. I don't
Wait a
mean
minute.
the Queen. I'm just.
Wait, do you see the Queen like walking around?
No, but the lake is like her castle is down to the big lake as well. You can kayak there and stuff. It's really nice.
So you and the Queen are friends. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
it's Denmark, it's a small country.
I love it. I'm actually not in New Hampshire. I am in the mountains of Virginia. And so it's overcast today, but if I look out my window, I see we're past peak now. So there's the trees, there's a little bit of yellow, but it's mostly green and bare, but it's beautiful. I can see a mountain, a little bit of a mountain, lots of trees. But it's
I'm really jealous. Denmark is like this. It's so flat. I'm sorry, I'm saying like this because nobody can see it.
Yeah. Anna is making her hands straight, like sort of like saying like the flatness of the land. Yeah.
So we have like a mountain in Denmark called the Sky Mountain, and it's 300 meters or something. Isn't like a little hill. It's really flat here, but we have lots of beach. Like my nearest beach, even though I don't live close to the ocean anymore, it's like 10-minute drive.
Wow.
And like to almost all sides, you're gonna have the beach. And I live in this really small town, but there's like a convict here that's been made into a museum. So there's some nice little cafes, and it's really nice here. It's really nice.
We have a lot to talk about, and I can't wait to sort of, part of me is like, let's get to it all. But another part of me is like, no, let's just sort of see where we get to. But let's talk about attachment and the nervous system. In outer and inner regulation. So tell me about that, because that's something that you like to write about. You're a writer, you write about, which I love this, all the IFS articles you write about, but this is something that you write about. So tell me about attachment and the nervous system.
Yeah, so the nervous system and attachment and IFS, in my view, and just the body is like, it's all kind of the same thing. So I get really surprised when I took somatic IFS, is one of my IFS educations, and I was so surprised that people like, so how do we bring this together? Like, how can you do therapy without the body? That doesn't exist in my view. And I'm trained as a family therapist and a nervous system therapist outside of IFS. And such a big part of my family therapist education was the nervous system, the body, and attachment, because that's really what it's all about. And I think IFS is attachment therapy because it's about our parts attaching inwards to ourselves, right? Just like as children, we attach outward. And that's how we start feeling safe. And feeling safe is the nervous system, right? That's what happens in the body and the nervous system. So it's all kind of the same, but different ways of talking about it and different ways we can approach it. Like with the nervous system, we can do only physical therapy, and that's parts work too, in a way, right? But we can also do it by talking, by being here together. So every time we're doing therapy, we are doing body work, we are doing attachment therapy, we are doing all this work in a way. So it's not really different things. So I'm just kind of, when I'm writing about it, I feel like I'm just writing the obvious, and people are like, wow, I never thought about that. So like outer attachment, or what we just call attachment normally, is the children attaching to the parents, right? Feeling safe or unsafe, of course, with the parents, which is co-regulation. And the more we can lean out and feel safe with our parents and have a calm nervous system, the more our parts will start leaning into the self and have a calm inner regulation, self-regulation, and an inner attachment. So we feel safe when we go out into the world, right? And when we didn't have that, then our parts are going to start making all these walls. I'm doing so much with my hands here that nobody can see. I don't know how to not do it. But
no, you're fine because you talk with your hands, but I talk with my hands too, but you're doing
that's good.
I think if you tried to stop talking with your hands, then you wouldn't be able to communicate as well, right?
So yeah, that's probably true.
We're saying the same thing, even if we use different language, or if we're maybe calling it sort of like attachment theory would sort of have this language about to your parent. That would be the outward attachment. Inward attachment would be my parts and myself connecting, and that would be sort of inward attachment. And then nervous system, there'd be language around nervous system sort of dysregulating and regulating our nervous system. And
exactly.
Talk therapy, so we're talking, and it's sort of talk therapy. And
it's all the same in a way, but some of it can also like if you only work cognitively, you're in a way you cannot not work with the body or not work with emotions, but you're going to do it in a limited way if you don't have that knowledge of how it all fits together. And how, just like in IFS, most people say, where do you notice that part in your body or around your body or something like that, right? It is all in the body, and it's energy that gets stuck right in your body, and you can release that through being with it, either with touch and pressure, or with just being there with your awareness, right? It's all the same in a way, but often the deeper or earlier the trauma, the more it's lodged, the more it's in your body and not up in your awareness, because it's before you can remember. In a way, I think all therapy is attachment therapy, and I think all trauma is in a way attachment trauma, because when things happen to us later in life, that could be a traumatic experience or a shock, a car accident. If we have early trauma, it taps into that, and we're going to get more dysregulated in general. And in a way, just a car crash in itself, this depends how you define attachment, but that also pulls us away from feeling safe in the world, from feeling that attachment. So in a way, you could say that's also an attachment trauma. It keeps, like, no matter what happens, it really goes into I'm not safe in the world, right? Which is away from attachment and away from feeling regulated inside of ourselves.
Beautiful. I love the way you just said that. And so if the car accident then triggers younger parts of us that did not feel safe in the world because of our family environment, then we're going to have then like a double attachment, double nervous system dysregulation problem.
Yeah, I mean, it taps into deeper things, right? Yeah, it does. So it impacts us more. The more early trauma, the more later trauma is going to really affect us. Like people losing a pet later on can really tap into both losing pets as a kid, also losing loved ones and not being able to mourn it. It's this like there's so many people and quite a few of my clients who lost parents early on, but like the way things were back then, at least in most cultures, most modern cultures, some years ago, when we were kids, is that you didn't really take care of the kids when they lost a parent. Like the other parent was so stressed with his own thing, and you didn't really like to think kids are gonna get over it. The younger they are, the easier they're gonna get over it fast, right? And even to the extreme of like back in the 80s, I think until 84, which is a bit crazy, shocking for me because I'm from 83. And luckily I didn't have surgery, but they did open heart surgeries on babies without any anesthesia because babies couldn't feel anything. So that's like that's people that are adults now and old people now that had like such early trauma that nobody took care of them, that just didn't have to happen at all, right?
My goodness.
Yeah, that's like one of the that's many horrible things to talk about that people do to other people just out of stupidness, you know.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
yeah.
And so when you think about attachment in its connection to the nervous system, would you say that disconnection is a good way to describe that? Like attachment wounding would be a disconnection. And then when we're little, let's just say we're like sort of, then we have the disconnection and that does something to our nervous system.
Yeah, I would say when we don't feel safe, sorry, when we're not feeling safe, we're not being seen as who we are. I mean, trauma is often not about the thing that happened, but more about not being met and not being loved, not being seen with loving eyes. So when that happens, we have to shut off from ourselves, right, to protect. So we do disconnect and we do exile those parts of ourselves and kind of hide that away because I'm not loved when I'm like this, right? Or even like the parts as small babies, when we're mirrored back from our parents all the time when we're small, like the baby smiles and then the mom smiles and then they send something back, and all these neural pathways are created, like millions of them. And the things that are not mirrored back, they kind of wither and die, those parts of the nerves of the brain and the system, because it's not being mirrored back. If my mom never smiles back to me, then I'm not going to know my own smile, right? Because that's how I learn it. So all these places, if we're not being met, I mean, they're not completely lost because the brain and the system is all plastic and we can do a lot of work on it, but they become exiled and we don't get to know these places in ourselves.
I love how you're saying that disconnection inward and outward. This is
Mm.
a theme of what you keep talking about, but right, there's a attachment wounding outward between me and mom, and then there's a attachment wounding inward between me and a part of me.
Yeah, that's so important that it's reflected right in our childhood. How our parents can be with us is how we can be with ourselves. And when they can't love us in some places or we don't feel loved, then we cannot love those, or we shut off to those places in ourselves. And protect us will be stronger in those areas, right? And I'm just thinking now in couples therapy, there's all these outwards conflicts, and often what we don't like in our partner, if we look inwards, there's the same not liking in ourselves, right? So when we get older, we start mirroring it out as well. And so it always goes both ways.
Yeah, and there's a part of me that's like, there's a part of me that's like, no, it's the thing in him that I don't like. It has nothing
Yes.
to me.
This only counts for other people, not
Yeah,
for
not
us.
for us. Mm-mm. No, not at all. Not at all. How do you, I mean, this is again, it's sort of like a part of me is like, this is a stupid question, but okay, let me ask this question. I think this is a better question. And I hear this a lot with people that have had all this disconnection in their inner disconnection, sort of early disconnection with their caregivers. And so there's this attachment wounding there from early. And then I'll hear people say, well, then I don't know how to do that for myself. Like, I don't, like, I needed my mom to do it. I needed my caregivers to do that. I needed my dad to do it. Usually it's the mom, right? I needed my mom to do it. She wasn't there. And so I don't want to do it for myself. I don't want to do it for my parts. Like, I want my mom to do it.
Yeah.
How you handle that? Because I hear that all the time.
Yeah. Or I want my partner to do it for me now, right?
Yes, right. Like, so I need this from my partner. And then we're like, okay, well, how can self meet that need? I need him to do this for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Really
That's
good
right.
point.
Yeah. And one really important point is, which is not very nice to hear, is that the only person who should have loved us unconditionally is our mom or our parents, not your partner, not anybody else, right? All those needs that you feel like your partner should meet for you, that's not his or her job. And that's not really nice to hear because you really want that from your partner, right? And that's part of why you fell for him or her.
Yeah, I just want everyone listening right now to notice what parts up they have for Anna doing this. And if you don't like Anna anymore, I understand that.
You can write a comment. I love to hear
Don't
it.
write a don't write a comment. No, just notice your own parts.
Take it to therapy.
Yeah, take it to therapy. It's a trail.
Yeah. About Anna, what we don't like about her.
It's not about me. It's going to be about you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so I noticed some parts of me. I'm saying that because I noticed some parts of me up there. Like, wait a minute, my partner like isn't going to unconditionally love me, and that's that. So my first thought is that feels very scary, and I want to like back from my partner because I need him. Okay, I'm going to say it. I need him to unconditionally love me, and then if I'm a part of me, maybe a part of me needs that. A part of me needs the security and safety of him unconditionally loving me.
Yeah, that's like a lot for him to carry.
Too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we have parts that feel like my mom should do it, she should have done it, I'm not going to do it, or my partner should do it, then really it's about appreciating those parts, really being there for those parts, right? Because it makes so much sense that there's such a longing, right? They make so much sense. And when they really get that contact, they can also mourn what they lost. Because it shouldn't have been like that. They should have been loved. Because we're lovable just being born. We're worthy just being born. And our parents didn't do that good enough. Because parents are not perfect, and sometimes they do a really bad job, and sometimes they do kind of a bad job. And it should have been different. And it wasn't. And we need to mourn that, because that gets stuck in us. Right. And of course our parts don't want to just settle for self, because that's what it feels like, right? And when they actually get that connection, they realize this is not settling at all. This is actually what I need. This is what I would have had if I could have leaned out to my mom. Then I would be able to lean out inside. And that's what I need. I don't need to lean into my partner from this young part. I need to lean into myself, and myself can lean out to my partner in a balanced way.
Anna, that was so beautiful. I love that. So there's a part of me that says, my I shouldn't settle for that. I shouldn't settle for just self.
Yeah.
My mom to do it. I want my partner to do it. But the experience my system has of self, it is not settling.
Exactly.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yeah. And we forget that. Our parts forget that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that brings to mind what, even as you say that, what happened in my nervous system, right? Like what my nervous system did when you said my partner doesn't have to unconditionally love me.
Yeah.
This is what my nervous system just did in this moment when you said that about actually it's not settling at all.
Yeah.
And I can just feel my whole body calm down. I'm talking slower and lower and not so hyper.
Yeah. This is really important. And that's what therapy is. I mean, just the whole therapy setting, like there's like just like in the family system, in our home, in our childhood, there's the children leaning out to the parent, right? Being safe. And in my view, one of the reasons why attachment is so important in IFS therapy as well, is because we want to create that safe room, that safe container. And that is a safe co-regulation. That is some kind of attachment that we're creating. It's a safe relationship, which can help us feel, the client feel safe enough in the room to actually be with their own part, to actually allow that those small shifts so there can be room for self, right? So it's co-regulation and self-regulation. It's not just one or the other. Lots of people come to IFS because they realize, hey, I can heal on my own. I don't need other people, right? And then realizing this relationship right here is part of that. You're not gonna, otherwise it's a manager building some walls and trying to do some work in here. And why is it not working, right? Because it's about the relationship. Like trauma is relational, attachment is relational, the nervous system is relational. There's a lot of teaching on the vagus nerve, which is really good, all the polyvagal stuff, but it's not just ourselves doing some work with our own nervous system. That's part of it, but the whole co-regulation, you and me together, is the most important part. That's how our bodies and our brains are created, and that's how we feel safe in the world. So that's so important to have that as part of it.
That's beautiful. And that's the attachment and the nervous system. So
Yeah.
even you and I together right now are like what's happening in my body and in my system just by talking to you and being with you. I can feel that calmness happening. I can feel more self energy. I can feel my parts settle down a little bit just being with you. And so and I'm doing a thing with my hands, sort of like a loop. Kind of, this is sort of my like co-regulating looping thing that
Mm-hmm.
my hand. But I think that's such a good point. And I have clients that, and I've heard this too, just not with my clients, but the idea that like I can do some work on my own, like I can do some work on my parts and with my parts on my own, but it's nothing like the work that I can do in therapy.
Yeah, that's right. Even though sometimes we're just holding space, especially with people who already know a lot of IFS or are trained in it, like they do so much work when we can hold space for them, right? Or when you see it in the trainings, when there's a whole group there, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But holding space, you're holding, we use this term of like, I'm holding space and this is a safe place, but the co-regulating is happening and the attachment healing is happening as I hold space.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm with you, I'm witnessing you. And so by doing this, there's some attachment, connection and healing happening by just us being together like that.
Yeah, that's right. And being seen, being witnessed with loving eyes is so healing. And at the same time, for many of our parts, that's the scariest thing in the world, right? Because that's really like, sometimes I have clients where we turn the camera off, or we don't face each other, or we take it really slow, also seeing how close should we be to each other, what needs to happen here for us to feel safe. Is the client more closed off, or what's going on here, right? Really being with what is present here in the therapy room. I think sometimes that's much more important than going back to all the stuff in the past, because it plays out right here between us, right?
Yeah, one thing that I've been saying more and more, and I might have said this on other podcasts, but what I've been saying for myself too, as a practice, and for my clients, is just who's here right now. Let's be with whoever is here. Basically, I'm meaning like what parts are here. And I do that for myself. Like who's here? Like who's up? And even as like a daily parts check-in of who's here, but saying that to our clients, like let's just slow it down and notice who is just here, right? Versus like, here's what I want to work on, or here's what I need to do, or here's this bad thing. Let's just name and notice just who's here.
Yeah, that's so important. And especially for these clients who feel like I want to work on this, and then this gets in the way, and this gets in the way. All these annoying parts get in the way. But just knowing that that's what we want to be, but that is the way. It's the next step, right? It's not in the way. And just the all parts are welcome, really being with that's really so true, because when that can be there, our system can relax a lot more.
Beautiful. That is the way. It's not in the way.
Yeah, I didn't make that up. I heard for that from somebody else. But it's so true, and it makes so much sense, right? Because then the part that takes me out, so I can register anything, and really that's for I really make that like really clear to my clients as much as I can, that everything is welcome, even if you think I'm really annoying or something like that right now. that's welcome too, because that's a part, right? And it's reacting to something. And it could even be that I have a part that's annoyed, right? So also just noticing that. Um, but also for the therapist, I think this is something that I'm really like I'm going to do a workshop on some of this, like being a self-led therapist and with attachment, all these kind of things, because especially outside of IFS, but also in IFS, this is I mean, I guess it's like not being self-led is what I want to call it, and not taking responsibility for that. Like not taking responsibility for, just like in childhood, the parents are 100% responsible for whatever happens. It's never the child's responsibility, even if the child is acting like crazy, right? There's always a good reason for it, just like with our parts, there's always a meaning. And it's never the child's responsibility. If we put it on the children, or if we don't take it as parents, the child will get it. And it's kind of the same in a way. There's always differences, of course, but in the therapy session, that the therapist is responsible. So if my parts are reacting to the client, and I'm not paying attention to that, we're pretty good at that in IFS because we have that, and I think that should be like an even bigger focus. Really noticing your own parts and having them step back, or speaking for that if they don't want to step back, because we're gonna I don't know what the word is, but project stuff onto our clients that does not belong to them and that causes so much harm. And there's lots of extreme cases of that, but also just in the small, like really cleaning up after ourselves when we make a mess and not expecting the client to do that or to figure that out.
Beautiful. I mean, I think that makes sense if part of the healing is the co-regulation.
Yeah.
The co-regulation is off and I'm therapist, then it is my role to say, okay, what parts of me are up and can I speak for that? And can I be with my part, see if they can step back and all that good stuff. Then can I speak for that with the client? And then how healing that is, right? To say, because how many of our parents did not say, okay, I have a part up, or I made a mistake, or here's sort of, there was there's no acknowledgement of, you and I were talking about mistakes earlier, which won't get in the recording. There was such, I think people, including me, have a hard time admitting mistakes, but when our parents don't do it, and then our therapist doesn't do it, then co-regulating doesn't happen.
That's not safe, right? Then I want to close off, then I want to protect myself. And there's so many people who are even in their 50s and 60s now who say, if my mom would just apologize to me even now, that would be so healing, right? Even it's never too late. It's never too late.
Yeah. So all the people listening to this with adult children, remember that, or any children, any children, any age. So let's shift a little bit to parenting, because as we're talking about, it's always the parent's responsibility. And even if the child is acting, having a fit and being naughty, it's still parents' responsibility, not the child's responsibility. So tell me about that, because I know this is another one of your passions and loves.
We have this whole theme in Denmark, which I kind of twisted it a bit, and I call it New Danish Parenting. And it's really that's both about the children, how we see children, because that's kind of an old paradigm of that really seeps through. Even though we know new things, we keep acting in these ways that are not actually helpful for kids. So just knowing that children always make sense. It's completely the same as with our parts, right? If even if you have a part that's drinking or almost killing you, you're not gonna scold that part. You're gonna get to know it. And it's the same with our kids. We want to really acknowledge where they are instead of saying, don't hit that other kid. I mean, of course you can say that too, but you're not necessarily scolding them for that, but actually saying, hey, what's going on here? And mirroring back, you were really angry with that kid, right? So that's why you hit him. So being seen in what I'm doing, not being told I'm bad, because then I think I'm hitting the other kid because I'm bad, right? That's what the kids learn then. So meeting them in that and knowing that children are competent. They're born competent. Even when they're just being born, they start looking for milk, right? That's the first thing they do. And when they're hungry, when they need a clean diaper, all these things, they tell us. They tell us through their expressions, and if we don't hear them, tell us through crying. And like when they get attention from us, when they don't want any more attention, when it's too much for the nervous system, they turn their head away. And some parents follow that. That's not the best thing. They tell us things in so many ways. They communicate back and forth. It's not just us parenting on our children. It's a mutual relationship that changes both of us in the relationship, right? And reshapes our brains. But sometimes we need to translate kids, because sometimes like they're gonna say I'm angry through hitting, for instance, right? Which is not the best solution to the problem, but it's the best solution they could come up with right now. There's a meaning in it, right? So it's really about translating them, understanding them, and meeting them where they are.
I love that. And I think about my son, like when he's anxious or scared, he might like be mean to me. And then I'm, you're picking on me. Why are you picking on me? You're the one that's scared. But then I'm like, oh, he's picking on me because he's afraid. He's afraid of this thing we're about to do or something, you know, and so he's afraid. And so then he will start like criticizing me or something.
Yeah,
And
that makes so much sense. It just like if I'm just putting myself in those shoes, I get this like kind of nervousness. Like I want to start doing something. I want to pick on somebody, right? Like if you have a sister or a cat, you would pick on her. Then you have to pick on your mom. There's nobody else. But just there's all this energy inside that you don't know what to do with, because it's hard to be with that place inside of yourself. So if mom can do that, then I'm going to be able to do that slowly, right?
yeah, and there's the like co-regulating and like healthy attachment that could be possible there. And maybe I can apologize for my ruptures.
Yeah,
like stop picking on me. But yeah,
of course.
right. There's an opportunity though for a really healing moment for him and for me, and for a connection there for him and for me, right? It's not just about him, but it's also what happens for me too.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean not having boundaries, right? But we have this is an old-fashioned way that we have learned to put our boundaries around our kids. You're wrong, you shouldn't do that, like we've learned like that kids like search for boundaries. We have like a word for that in Danish, that they're like, we have to, they want us to put boundaries around them to feel safe, which is actually not true. They actually, when they want boundaries, they want our boundaries. So put your boundary around yourself, not around your child, right? So who am I? They're looking for contact, they're looking for connection, they're looking for the parent, because that feels safe. So if they cannot feel me, then they're gonna start looking and looking and looking, and then we're gonna be, hey, why are you picking on me? Right? What's wrong with you? But it's because they can't really feel us there, right? So they need even more attachment. They need to know, who am I? What is my boundary? And so many of us who are parents today, us especially mothers, are really out of contact with our anger. And anger is a boundary, not like scolding angry, but anger from the inside. Here am I, right? And here's who you can be with me right now. That's really safe, right?
Yeah, I almost like that doesn't feel like anger. It feels like I wish people could see you, because you have your hand on
You're clear.
Yeah, when you said that, you sort of put your sort of here am I, and you kind of put your hand sort of up, like a strong presence, like powerful, like it sort of feels more like powerful.
Yeah.
Like
that's healthy anger.
Yeah. Okay.
That's anger is very misunderstood. That's a whole theme in itself. But anger is really my clarity from the inside. It's my boundary, right? Like when we talk, Gabor Mate talks about this too. When it becomes rage, it's actually anxiety. It's not anger. All that acting out or pressing it down, right? Then you're gonna get actually physically sick. Or acting it out is a different thing, because it's me not allowed to have my anger, so it becomes this whole new thing. But anger is clarity in a way. Anger from the inside, like primary anger, instead of secondary on top of something else. Yeah,
I love that. I'm gonna play with that idea and my system, like, you know, what it feels like to have a angry clarity or something. I don't know. I love it.
Yeah.
I notice some parts around like, ooh, maybe we could think of anger differently this way. I like it. And I think we've already talked about this a little bit, but tell me about this: relationships matter most.
Yeah, that's actually part of the new Danish parenting kind of theme. I have like, because we're doing a podcast on it on my podcast soon. So there's like the children part, there's the relationship part, and there's the parenting part. So the relational part, we just talked about the understanding kids and how they make sense. So the relationship part is, one thing is that we're equal in worth. There's a different word for it in English, I think, but I'm just going to say it like this. So we're not equal in power, we're not equal in experience, but we're equal in worth. And when we're not equal in power, just like in the therapist relationship, it very often feels like then we're not equal in worth. Or if you go to the doctor or something, it feels like you just have to go along with everything they say, right? So just, there's this very cool guy in Denmark who wrote a bunch of books about parenting too, and he's saying if you wouldn't say it to an adult, don't say it to a child. So don't, also just like in how much clothes they should wear and stuff like that, them feeling themselves and how warm or cold they are is regulating. That's the body regulating, right? And being able to have my boundaries. Like so often kids just have to put so much clothes and they're so sweaty, because I'm always like, I always tell my daughter that I'm freezing on her, or like, you can really say in English the same way, that when she's not wearing enough clothes, and I feel cold for her, but she's not actually cold, right? It's about me. Yeah. Or if we force them to eat until the plate is empty, for instance, right? Or you cannot have your dessert then, or something like that.
Right. Yeah, because, and we know from that one that teaches us that I'm not trusting my body, right? There's a couple things happen with that. Like you're teaching me that I don't trust my body. And then you're also teaching me that other people know more.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know
about what
my body, and right. And I don't know, other people then can tell me because they know more, they know the right thing, or
yeah. So don't listen to what you feel or what you think.
yeah.
Exactly. And just imagine, I was going to do some videos on this. I didn't do them yet. Like two adults sitting together, and the one is like, I'm done. And the other one is like, no, finish your plate. You're not done. Eat another potato. Right. Just like, there's lots of different things in that.
I love that. And you could do one with the clothes too, right? You could do one with the clothes, like,
exactly.
Back it, we're going out. You need to, like, yeah, or something.
Yeah, you could tie your shoes yesterday, so you can do it today. Right? You would never say that to another adult. Imagine saying that to your partner, right? So don't say it to a kid. It's not very respectful.
Yeah, I love that.
When we're setting our boundaries around our kids, when we're defining them, when we're kind of being mean to them in a way, or bullying them, they don't stop loving us. They stop loving themselves. That's survival. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me why that happens. They don't stop loving us. They stop loving themselves.
Yeah. Because we're the survival, right? We're the safe person in the world, even when we're not safe. They have to lean out to us. So mom has to be right. I have to kind of, I mean, in technical terms, there's sort of splitting up happening about the good mother and the bad mother and all this kind of thing, from older psychology. But just the fact that they have to lean out to us, they have to feel safe, means they have to shut something off in themselves. They believe, like you talked about before, they believe the parents more than they believe what they feel inside, right? Because we're social creatures. This is how we learn. This is how we survive. So they're gonna have to stop loving themselves to be loved, to survive, basically.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, I think, right, like, and I think that's, and we see that then in adults, right, that kind of internalized some of their parents' voices or messages in order to have survived back then, but then those internalized messages in parts then are still really active. And then
yeah, that's really true. They keep, even when we move away from home, our parts of us take on voices to protect us. When we talk to those parts, they're going to learn that, so we don't have to get rid of them or anything like that, right? But it really stays, our parents' voices stay with us, and the beliefs. Yeah. So there's a lot of, and that's what I love about IFS, that we don't just like kind of figure out what's there and maybe like dip our toes into it a little bit and be more self-compassionate, but we really can really heal that, right? And we can really create those inner attachments.
Right, because we see and witness then the part, right? So that's what we're doing that feels so different is that when I'm seeing and witnessing the part, which is something you've said this whole time, which I felt is just so brilliant, that then there's that beginning of that attachment connection with me when I see something that they're like, no one saw this, or I see when I witness that witnessing, and that's myself connecting and attaching and having
Yeah.
the attachment with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the opposite of trauma is love, right? So when we're seen lovingly, we don't get the trauma, the bad things that happen to us do not get stuck. And in itself, not being seen is traumatic, not being seen lovingly or being shamed. That's a whole other thing with shame and shame regulation is that when we're small, we get a lot of shame, we get a lot of no's, like which we have to get, but we're not often regulated out of that shame. So we're stuck alone in that. That's the nervous system shutting down as well. And when we're not regulated out of that, we can't come out. We can't cope. We can't self-regulate when we're small children. We have to co-regulate. So if my mom says no, if I'm very small and leaves me in that, I can't get out of that. That's my protectors having to do that for me, or get up again and put on a smile on my face. That's not very real, right? And that in couples relationships later on, being disagreeing on stuff becomes really, really dangerous, because then I fall right back into that place of being a 2-year-old or something, right? And I can't get out of that. So many of us, and I speak for myself as well, has so much shame on I mean, I want to say on top of everything, but it feels like everything is just like dipped into like shame water or something like that, it's just soaked in it.
Yeah, well, and I think that if we understand shame as I am bad, and that's what you're saying, is that's what kids learn. Well, if there's some sort of rupture here, or there's some disconnection with attachment with my mom, then or I'm not getting the unconditional love that I need, then it must be because I'm bad. And so then there's that shame that happens right there. And so then if my partner or my husband disagrees with me, then it's because I'm bad. Or
Yeah.
if there's a disagreement, then I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be a good girl, because that's the good girl is
Yeah.
the
Or I'm gonna make sure that he's bad, he's the one who's wrong, because I don't want to go to that place inside of me, and he's not gonna want to go to that place inside of him. So it's gonna be these protectors just fighting and fighting, like dogs
yeah.
or something.
Yeah. I heard a IFS trainer say that that's really what couples fight about, is who's bad. Right? That's what
That's
we're
right.
who's bad here. I mean, I know the answer.
It's him, right?
Yeah, obviously.
And it's so important when we have these like feelings that we feel like our partner puts on us, that pain that's down there, it's already there. Like, so really getting to know those places, because you can't just, they're not going to just go away. You're going to keep reacting from that place. Your protectors are keep reacting from that place, and really narrowing what you can do, right, in your life. So really being with that is healing in so many ways. We don't have no idea like how different our bodies and relationships can feel when we start healing. It's like, I had no idea when I started this journey on my own. Like, I was so surprised at how connecting it felt to just have those conversations that I have, like, if you talk about the, what's it called, the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses, like mine is freeze. So I never really felt that connection. So that's one of the things I love being a therapist, is how much we get out of it too, right? Just having that connection with other people, and how much some people have no idea that this exists.
Yeah, I agree. I say two things. One is, yeah, it is such a healing experience when my system lets me stay in uncomfortable conversations with my partner. If I can stay in if my system lets me stay, and we can have a beautiful, and this is typically what happens, we have a beautiful connecting, sometimes really hard, that feels so much better than me just being out of there. Like either I'm
Yeah.
dissociative or I leave. And so that feels like something I've never experienced before, like never experienced those types of conversations. And then the other thing I want to say is, you made such a good point about if I or the listener, whoever, you didn't say me, but say if there's something that I'm having a struggle with my partner about, and I'm thinking he needs to change, he needs to do this, he needs to do that, but it's actually a need that I have. Actually, it's about me, and I know that it is, because you can change partners and you still have the same problem.
Yes.
Yeah. Then you're like, okay, maybe it's me, and maybe there's a part of me that needs some work, because it's like, yeah, you could change partners and you're still going to have the same parts. So
That's right.
work on your own parts.
You're gonna marry like 10 different people in your life, something like that. And either that could be the same person and you develop together, or it's going to be 10 different people, but it's, it's the same. It's your own parts that keeps choosing. So if you don't heal that, it's just, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
repeating the same patterns, really.
We only have a few minutes left. Tell me so there's 3 levels to the new Danish parenting. So tell me the first 2 that we just talked about, and then let's talk about the third one.
Yeah. So the first one is about the children and children always making sense. The other one is about the relationship or the attachment. The relationships matter most. It's like a hashtag we have in Denmark. And then the last one is conscious parenting. That's also a hashtag.
I will hashtag all those things. Love it. I love it.
So this one's about the parent. And one thing is, like we talked about with the therapist, we talked about this actually, the parent is always responsible. If you have in couples, you're going to be 50-50, you 2 adults together, right? So you have 50%, you have your own parts of the relationship. With a child, the parent is always responsible. No matter how crazy you think your child is acting, you're the responsible one. And parenting is not a role. Parenting as a role is a kind of an old paradigm thing, just like doctor as a role. The teacher used to be a role, like you have to listen to me because I'm your teacher. And the kids are not, at least in Denmark, kids are not buying that anymore. Yeah. So the teacher has to be a person, and we're gonna respect you when you deserve respect, really. And it's the same as a parent. It's really sad, most of us, when we think back on our childhood, our mother was just like this, like a flat character in movies. She was mom, but I don't know anything about her, right? And just the thing about your boundaries, setting your boundaries around yourself, feeling your anger, knowing yourself from the inside, speaking from yourself, not in Denmark, I know you have this in American too, like you shouldn't do that. It's like this kind of, it's nobody you're really talking about, but there's just these rules, how you should be, how you shouldn't be. And so you're just saying all this like not personal stuff that nobody knows why it's like that, but really speaking from yourself, saying I don't want that, or I want that, or whatever it is. And for your children to get to know who you are, right, that's really safe too. And that's actually being a real person instead of some character people told you to be because you're a parent.
Or even like noticing the parts of you. I'm so curious about the parts of people that are coming up as they listen to this, but like, the parts of you that say, that respond to that, like that, it doesn't matter who I am, or, when I become a mom or I become a parent, then, sort of, we might have these rules around, or sort of these beliefs that I don't matter anymore, or, whatever that is. So it would be interesting to see what that triggers in people.
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. The last part of this is heal your own trauma. Like, and nobody's perfect. Nobody's gonna heal all their trauma. Nobody's gonna not pass anything on to their children. That's not the point. The point is, the more you heal, the more you don't pass on, right? And really, when it's like, we don't have to be perfect. Our children actually don't need perfect parents. If you're a perfect parent, then one thing is that's a part, you're playing a role, and your kids are going to have to live up to that, and they have to be perfect. So there's this very narrow line. So we all make mistakes, and really embracing that you're allowed to make mistakes, you're allowed to change your mind. That's not that confusing for your kids. The thing is to speak from yourself and to clean up after yourself, to apologize when you make a mess. Like, that's not making our kids lose respect for us or authority or anything like that. That's your personal authority. That's actually healthy authority, instead of some role and something we have to put on our kids. So really, healing is healing your trauma. Doing therapy, or all these kind of ways you can work on yourself, is not like what's the word, egocentric or something like that, right? That's like, do that for your children, for your family, for your community, because it's like the least selfish thing you can do, even though it also feels very good when you get past it. It feels horrible to be seen. At least it was like that for me in the beginning.
Yeah, right. You're like, I don't want to take off or I don't want to jump in the pool, right? I don't want to jump in the pool. I don't want to jump in the pool. And then you're like, oh, it feels so good to jump in the pool.
Yeah,
Not
and
that it
just
feels
dip
so
your
good.
toes.
Yes, right, exactly.
Don't like jump all the way.
I love it. Yeah. Is there anything you want the listeners to know about you? You know, what you're doing, what you're up to, and how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, so I write a lot. One thing, I've always been a writer, but before I did therapy, I was one of those writers who I wrote screenplays and novels, and I wrote so much, but I almost never finished anything. Which I actually started doing now and publishing things, which is really nice. But I mostly write a lot of articles right now. There's going to be, I'm sure, lots of books when I have time for it. But I, like you already mentioned, that I write a lot about IFS and attachment and new Danish parenting and the nervous system and these kind of things. And I have this guide for clients that I got to I did 5 chapters now, which I'm publishing like on Medium and my blog, so it's all for free.
And people can find that on your website or on or both.
Yeah. Okay. On Medium they can find it there, but sometimes people can't access Medium, or you can only access 5 articles without paying or something like that. So I put it on my blog to have both Danish and English blog. You can find it on my website, which is just Anna Vincentz not punctum, that's Danish, .dk.
Perfect.
And then I have my podcast. I have a Danish podcast that I'm not sure if we're going to continue that. It's called The Mom Revolution in English, which I did together with a Danish coach. It's not completely IFS, it's more like new Danish parenting. And then I started a new podcast with my my co-host Joel. He's British, but he lives in Italy, and he's an IFS coach. And so we're doing this parenting from the inside. And the first episode is on like kind of basic attachment for parents. And so that's like kind of easy intro to it and lots of examples. And we have a meditation too. People can try it too if you don't know what IFS is or what that feels like. And we just put out the second episode today as we're recording this, which is about attachment. So it's attachment and self-led parenting. So what is attachment, and how can I be a safe attachment figure for my children, and some steps to kind of getting back to self. We have a meditation on that too. New day. No, what's it called? Parenting from the inside.
Parenting from the inside. So I love that. I'm so excited about this. So parenting from the inside. And that is, can they get that anywhere? Can they get that on like any podcasting stuff, or is it just?
Yeah, I think so. At least on like Spotify and iTunes and whatever.
That's perfect. Called. Where people get podcast stuff. So side. So definitely check that out. Check out Anna's website for all the articles that you write. I think they're so great.
Yeah, Instagram I post a lot, and people can find it on Facebook too. I'm probably doing a workshop whenever I have time to actually finish that, which is like for therapists and practitioners, which is bringing all this kind of stuff into. It's more about bringing it into people's awareness, because it's already part of it, but then there's also going to be exercises for really working on the nervous system, so people really get a felt sense of that.
That's fantastic. I'm super excited, Anna, for all you put out there in the world. Is there anything you want people to know about you?
People get surprised when I tell them is how I met my husband. So my son is 11 now. So I met my husband around 12 years ago. I was hiking a lot before I had kids. And I hiked through Slovenia at that point. My husband's from Slovenia. And I wasn't actually going to go to the capital city there, but somebody else told me to do it. I was like couch surfing with other people and sleeping in a small tent when I wasn't in the, like I have this really small green tent that you can just put up anywhere so people can see it. So I just had it all these weird places, and then this really big backpack. And then I did this. I stayed with a couch surfer in the city where my husband lived, and he was a couch surfer too, but I didn't know him. But we met. So there was this kind of gathering, and he showed up there, and we were only like, we ended up just being 5 people or something like that. And then and I still remember seeing my husband there the first time. He was 22, I think. I was 26, so I thought I was very old. And he was just sitting there feeling like really smart, and just like being this little kid almost. But we ended up at the end of the evening, it was only me and him together at the skeleton bar, and we decided to get married. So
Wait. You decided to get married?
yeah, so we were both talking about how, like, I always had this idea when I was younger that I'm not gonna get married. I'm just gonna hike forever, stuff like that. But if I were to get married, it's just be like a joke, just like where you could just get married the next day kind of thing. And he was like, yeah, I don't know who started talking about this. I can't remember. He was like, oh yeah, I would totally be like that too. And then like it ended up sometime later, hey, let's get married. So the next day, instead of going on to Croatia, I moved into his place and we went to the Danish embassy, but there was like so much paperwork, so we couldn't get married that fast. But so a month later, I was pregnant with my son, that's why I was thinking he's 11 now. And we moved to Denmark. Like we met on the 1st of June and we moved to Denmark the 10th of October, and then we got married on the 6th of November. 12 something years ago.
Wow. So how's it going so far?
We're still married. We have 2 kids now. Still married. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I can really see, like, if you look at it from a parts perspective, how we really both found somebody I was a lot more shut off from all my stuff back then. So we found somebody who our nervous system could handle, right? Or who our parts could handle. So just like finding somebody who's safe enough, the fact that we're getting married, it's like we could talk about anything from the start. Nothing was too scary to talk about because we were getting married anyway. So that felt really safe, right? So we were already living together, and I was pregnant soon after, and it just kind of worked out. I think that was otherwise my parts would have been way too scary to get that vulnerable with somebody else. So yeah, that's how our parts can be smart like that and make decisions. Of like I love it how I see when there's like fairy tales and Disney movies, and people are like, you can marry somebody you just met. And I'm like, maybe you could. It worked out for me.
Well, Mary, yeah, what I'm hearing you say is maybe you can if your nervous systems feel safe and connected, and your body knows that, your parts know that.
Yeah, because you can make lots of mistakes too.
This is true, right? Yeah, I remember reading that before, and you said this earlier, like your parts keep picking, like who picking that boyfriend, or who is picking, like which part of me is picking that boyfriend. And I remember reading that, and I thought that's so interesting. Like which part of me is choosing that boyfriend?
Yeah.
Thank God, it was his parts and your parts chose very wisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. So I think I probably know the answer to this question, but so my last question, if you were not doing all the things that you do, and you do a lot of things, if you were not doing that and you had to do something different, what would you do instead?
I'm curious about what your guess is.
My guess is you would be hiking and couch surfing and sort of living that life, living sort of that life, which is a little bit different than what you're living now.
Yeah, it's very different from what I'm doing now, and I probably would if I didn't have a family. And what I would say, if you didn't say all the things you do now, I would say be a writer, but I'm still doing that. So the thing that I would do if I was less traumatized, I want to say, if I didn't have so many parts that didn't want me to be seen, I would be a rock star.
I love it. All right. So who's your favorite rock star? Like who would you be like if you were a rock star?
I always imagine I would be up on stage with Springsteen.
I love it. That's such a great answer. Anna, is there anything else you want to say before we end?
I just think one of the really important things, especially for IFS, both clients and therapists, is like the relationship part of this whole thing, that trauma happens in relationships and healing happens in relationships. Being born, being alive, all this stuff is relationships. It's not just you and your own. Like we really need each other both like our parts need each other and they need ourselves, and we need our families, our kids, we need each other in community. We need each other for healing. Like that's really such a big part of what it is being human, and this individualistic kind of thing we're trying to create here is not going to work out. Yeah, so really embracing that, even when it's scary, even when we had trauma from our relationships, just really giving that some trust that that's what heals too.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. It's really fun to talk to you.
You too.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, like, all the things. My book is available at your favorite independent bookstore or all the places books are available. You can also visit my website, tammysallenberger.com, where you can download a free meditation on getting to know your should parts. You know, there's parts of you who remind you of what you should be doing. They sound a bit critical at times. Yes, we all have them. You can follow me at IFS Tammy on Instagram and Twitter and the One Inside Facebook page. I'm so grateful for Jack Reardon, who created the new music. Jack is a graduate of Derek Scott's IFS Stepping Stone program. Thanks, Jack, for getting me. And to you, thanks for listening.